Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to talk about unlocking the architecture mindset. We'll also talk about the common challenges faced by the Salesforce architect. First thing first, let's understand who is a Salesforce architect. Salesforce architect is the trusted advisor who design your Salesforce org strategy, create the data model, and design the process. They are the one who establish the development best practices, set the standard for the developer, which the developer can follow, which might include your coding best practices, configuration best practices, as well as integration patterns and all other best practices which the developer can follow. They are also the one who create the documentation for the architecture, define the architect best practices, making sure the consistency and it's follow the compliances. They are the one who actually create the high level design document, low level design document, and LLDs. They are the influencers who make the hard decision and communicate it to the leadership, to the development team. So communication is the biggest skill over there. Now, they are the one who recommended the best solution considering the trade-off solutions. So it's not about they are recommending the solution. They are the one who consider all the possible solution and figure it out the best solution out of it and suggest the best solution which will be scalable for the long time. Now, they are the one who actually look into the bigger picture and making sure whatever the architecture and solution they are designing that will be the future proof and making sure that it will be handle the future roadmap of your project delivery as well as will able to handle the large data volume into the future. So these are the key skills a architect should have. Now let's talk about if you want to become an architect into the Salesforce, how to become one of them. So navigating the path from the Salesforce developer to the architect. First thing first, do the self-assessment, do the self-evaluation. Check it out how much base knowledge you have about the Salesforce platform, how much you know about Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, CPQ, data migration, single sign-on, and integration. And figure it out what all are your weak point and focus on that. Now, next part, find a mentor. From a mentor, learn about leadership skills, experience what they learn as an architect, get learn about communication skills, and learn about the management skills. That all are important, which you can easily learn from a mentor. And when you want your thing, you are ready after your self assessment and your mentor give you feedback. Now it's time to start your journey to architect. The biggest shift in your career is the mindset. So you have to think about the bigger picture if you want to become an architect. So think about trade-off solution. Usually when you are a developer, you simply jump into the solution and try to implement. But when you are an architect, you might need to think about the all possible solution and then think about which one is a scalable and for your project for the longer term. So that mindset you have to learn. And then next thing, learn about the business. Learning about the platform is very much important, but learning about the business is also very important to give them to give your client a best solution and learn about in and out of the platform so that you know when to use Salesforce, when not to use Salesforce, and when you need to introduce a new strategy or new product so that you can take a decision what I can pick it up. And think beyond the development and user story. Once you're an architect, don't think about only user story, how to implement. Look into the bigger picture, how you can implement that into the scalable way. Then definitely, once you are ready for your journey, it's a first next step is you are getting the certification. Check it out the Salesforce architecture pyramid and prepare for that and majorly focus on the application architect and system architect exam. For that you have to clear data architect, sharing, the deployment lifecycle, and identity, and these are the core for any project implementation or to become the architect. Once you are done with all the certification, focus on the 7 domain. First is the system architecture, security, data, solution, integration, deployment, and the communication. These are the 7 common domain which every architect should focus to become a successful architect in the career. Now, let's move to the next slide. Thinking beyond the development and architecture thought process. So, when you are developing an architecture, what all should be in your mind while developing or designing the solution? The first thing first, think about the org strategy and licensing. When you are working on any project, you should know about, you should go with a single org or the multiple org. You should know about which licenses is needed for this particular implementation. You should know about the personas. You should know about the your customer software landscape, so that when you are going to do any integration, what all tool you can use. And definitely you have to, if you are working on enterprise project, you have to check it out what all the software landscape they have in their system, which you can leverage while your implementation. Now next thing is the system landscape, which is very much important. So you should have spent time on the data model, which is very important. And then application solution, think about the security, how you will make your application more secure if you are going on a public side of it. And create all the sequence diagram, data flow, and define the actors and persona which need to be there for your implementation. Now, once you have everything ready, being an architect, you should have focus on the data flow and the data architecture. You should know what is your source system versus your target system, how the data will be flow. Accessibility and visibility is also another point. Who should see what, and who should, to whom you need to restrict the data. Data modeling is another thing, and then also think about the data volume and the security. Getting a solution is might be easy, but making sure your solution will be work on the millions of record over the time, that is also very much important. Think about the performance. If you have small data, then how your performance will be work, but what about if you have large data in over the year, how it will be work? So that kind of parameter you should have while considering the data flow and the data architecture. Next thing is integration. Being an architect, you should think about all the different integration architect patterns and think about which one will be best for your project. Know about the different frameworks, know about the API gateway and security, and you should aware when to use the middleware services. And major thing about when you're implementing the integration, you should also know about authentication versus authorization, and when to use which particular OAuth principle based on the different implementation, and ensure the scalability, consistency, and reusability, so that whatever the framework you are choosing and whatever the framework you are building can be reusable. And definitely, being an architect, you should also have a knowledge of the DevOps, making sure how the testing process will be work. And you should have a background about branching strategy, coding version, and CI/CD, because this is the common challenges into most of the project. If you have a knowledge about it, you can easily provide the solution. And then quality and the governance, which is very much important, because over the time, whenever you will be hand over the project to someone or you are building someone, forget the things. So create the clear documentation process, code quality process, best practice and checklist. And if possible, if you have a budget, focus on the Salesforce COE and create the designing authority and architecture review board. So that all you should think beyond the development for the architecture thought process. Now, while designing, there are few things which you should always consider in your mind. General architecture strategy. So when you're designing, you should have a couple of things in your mind. How the front end will be look like, how the middleware will be there, and how the reporting and back end would be there. So while you're doing it, you should have think about build versus buy, when you need to go with the App Exchange product or when you should build. So it's all depend on timing and the budget. Based on that, you can decide which products are already there into App Exchange product. Instead of wasting the time for developing the same product, you can always go to buy the product instead of building the product. But again, if the timing is not concerned, you always have an option to build. Next thing is org strategy. If you are onboarding in a project and you already have a different implementation in single org, that is the right time to evaluate the org and making sure that should you go into the same org or should we go into the different org. The next one is environment strategy and licensing. Most of the people inherit the org and they don't focus on the licensing part. But if you have a luxury, then always consider which license is a perfect fit for the customer, so that you can save the cost for the client and use the right persona and licensing for particular environment. And business strategy and customer life cycle, that is another important part. If you think about this all come into the business and solution architecture. Now come to the technical architecture. When it's come to the technical architecture part, there are multiple things come into the picture, like how you will be integrating two system, and how your identity and access management will be work, how the data flow and data architecture will work, and how you will doing the sharing and the security implementation. It will also, like, once you have everything ready on this part, your Salesforce solution is ready, then consider about the DevOps process and implementation, how the deployment will be happen, and also consider about the mobile, so that in future if the customer want, they can move on the mobile. And if you have a large data implementation, data transformation, think always about ETL and ESB. And when you're doing the reporting, you always should have a knowledge about master data management system, AWS, Heroku reporting and analysis, so that customers can connect your data with the Salesforce, with the external system as well, and do the centralized reporting. So this all are the principle always in your mind when you're designing any solution. Now talk about the common pitfall and the common mistake which an architect do. The first thing first, missing the discovery session. So most of the time I see uh, architect mostly start working on the solution, missing the discovery session, and they don't have a clear understanding of the scope, timeline, and no clear goal what they are doing, and they start directly jumping into the solution without knowing the background. They show no empathy while solving. Most of the time if see architects start building the solution, they just started pointing the finger on the previous implementation, not listening the thing, and start giving the solution without even listening the people. And wrong data model, where you most of the project you see where you see the legacy code, you might be seeing the record log issue, SOQL 101 error, CPQ limit, no quick delivery for a new feature, that most of the time come because of the wrong data model. I will recommend you spend more time on the data model, making sure your data model is scalable and will be handled for large data volume. Lots of customization. Salesforce recommended 80% configuration and 20% coding, but pretty much we found it's come to the opposite. So making sure follow the Salesforce principle and write less code and try to achieve most of the functionality with out of the box Salesforce function features. Using Salesforce for everything, that is another common mistake which I see in a project. Yes, Salesforce have most of the solution, but Salesforce is not a solution for everything. Think about time, think about large data, think about processing time and the security, and based on that take your decision when you should use which particular platform, or if you need to use, definitely you have MuleSoft, you have other software stack into the Salesforce ecosystem which you can always introduce. Ignoring the app exchange, most of the time I see instead of checking out the existing solution what we already have in app exchange product, I see the team spending time to building that and spending months and months on a particular product. I will highly recommend it. If you have no budget concern, look into the app exchange product. If the product is already built, you can always leverage it. Lack of governance, I see people come, implement the project and run away, and over the time they miss the documentation, they forget to set this standard consistency, and having the multiple vendor in the project that cause this kind of issues. So set up your governance process, define the skill set and standard, and make sure we are following the consistency across the org. No documentation, people come build and after that they forget and introduce the future tech debt, duplicate code, and that kind of issue is a commonly seen in while we see the Salesforce implementations. Now we know these issues, now we know how to resolve it. Definitely the solution is always focus on the discovery sessions, and while doing the solution, listen people's and provide them solution at the end after learning about their problems, and spend more time on the data model so that you can create a good data model, and focus on the Salesforce principle. Use out of the box feature as much as you can do it, and also think about the different architectures and different software landscape and different software stacks what available in the Salesforce ecosystem. Whenever you think you are doing the last data calculation or processing, you always have a different option like Roku, MuleSoft, and other thing. Think about that as well in your solution, and check it out when you're implementing a solution. Check it out the app exchange product if you can leverage one of them, and create a proper governance process, set up the skill set, and make sure your documentation is ready and teams is following it. So far we talk about technical skills. Now let's talk about what all you need to learn to become an architect. So you should have a good foundation on your technical side, and then learn about other skill set as well. So you should have a technical skill set, you should have the communication skill set, you should learn about the leadership, because being an architect you should learn the leadership skill so that you can work with your team, with the development team, and communicate to the stakeholder about your solution. And you should be a teamwork, learn about how you can do a good teamwork, and you should be a problem solving guy. So there are multiple kind of problems, so you should be always ready to solve, if it is a people problem or it's a project problem or it's a technical problem. So learn about on this kind of skills. Now, how you can improve your productivity? There are two things. Learn about essential health strategy for the Salesforce architecture. Stay up to date. Learn about Salesforce best practice. Learn different tool, and learn about communication and presentation. Learn about the diagramming tool, learn about Salesforce CLI, learn about deployment tools, learn about uh, Chrome extension, which might helpful for you to do quick analysis and presentation tools. So that's all about from my side, and please let us know if you like this session. Thank you so much.